really speak Pidgin English, it was important for me to reflect that in the story so that the reader understands that, you know, just the different strata in society and the levels of people that we have. I would say tell your story unapologetically, because somebody also asked me and I said, but you can't live life just expecting to be validated or not validated. Yeah, so for me it was important to pass a message. For me it was important to tell my story. The validation secondary, because I will do it the same way, you know, whether or not whatever anybody thought or thinks about Dear Alarie, I will tell my story, because it's important at the end of the day, when you go to bed, be satisfied that you have done what truly makes you happy as a writer. And some people just have a lot of stories in there just waiting to, you know, to come out. But it's that fear of acceptance, and really and truly you can't live life waiting to be accepted by everybody. It's just not the way to do things. I would say that is changing, to be honest. I mean, a lot of reading clubs springing up rather. A lot of, no, I would say it's changing. I know that, you know, just even surviving in Nigeria is an art. So you find quite a number of people probably not having the time to read, but I don't think it's fair to say that we don't read. I think things are really, really changing.
Phone switch to on, light on.
Switching command to internal.
Expectedly bad, TW.
Fuel tank pressure 60.
ET 1150.
Your nav state with back and is perfect.
Corruption is said to undermine justice and the rule of law in societies. On this week's episode of Our Voices, we'll explore how women are affected by corruption as they seek access to basic needs such as health services and even when they try to climb the ladder in leadership positions. We'll discuss this and more from a recent VOA Africa Division series that reveals misconduct across numerous sectors on the continent entitled Dirty Deals: Uncovering Corruption in Africa. Hello there and welcome. I'm Oriani Tangishaka and this is Our Voices. And with me today is my colleague Jeannie Niwa. Siminish is out today. Hello, Jeannie.
Hi.
What are your thoughts on this topic, Jeannie? Are women more prone to corruption as much as men? What do you think?
You know, I approach this topic being biased, thinking that, men are corrupted and women are all victims. But, recent studies actually shows that it's gender neutral. We are all susceptible to be corrupted. However, because women do not, have a tendency is not to have like those managerial position, and corruption is different type of corruption, they are less likely to enter certain type of corruption network, let's say. So there is maybe a difference in the type of corruption they're more susceptible to be.
You are very right. I do agree when you say that the perception is that men are more corrupt. I don't know why, but I think that it's fair to say because, they're not in the spotlight as much as women when it comes to corruption. And that's interesting. I'm going to look at that more, the research on women and corruption.
Yeah.
Well, joining us to look into this topic deeper is Mrs. Anne Mbewele Anamela. She is the Executive Director of NGOCC, a non-governmental gender organization coordinating council, who is right now in Lusaka, Zambia. Miss Anne, how are you doing? Welcome to Our Voices.
I'm well, thank you, and thank you for inviting me.
Well, before we dive deep into the questions with you, let's watch this story from Nigeria, where some experts say corruption is really a systemic issue. For example, the country's Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, says the banking sector is responsible for 70% of financial crimes. Reporter Timothy Obiezu tells us more from the capital, Abuja. Let's take a look.
In April 2021, Uche Ohiri learned about an agro-business scheme that offered to pay up to 30% interest on investment in 4 months. She took the bait and invested $550, but the company shut down soon after, and its founder vanished into thin air.
I tried to log in. I had access to the website. I could see the fund. I could see the interest, but I could not do anything.
Like Ohiri, hundreds of investors who lost their monies reported the company to the police. But they found out via news reports that the same firm had been accused of a $70,000 bank loan fraud in connivance with corrupt bank officials. The bank in question, though, denied any wrongdoing.
It was a joke at first to me because it has never happened to me. Okay, you guys got to be kidding me. But unfortunately, it wasn't a joke.
Fraud is on the rise in Nigeria's financial system. Nigerian institutions have lost $201 million to fraud since 2020, according to the Financial Institutions Training Center, a research and advocacy organization. Experts say growing electronic payments and less stringent verification standards are making local targets more vulnerable to fraud, and that financial institutions are often unable to thoroughly probe fraud cases due to poor information sharing and lack of coordination.
The system is designed in such a way that its attempt to address corruption is superficial. We need structural strengthening, institutional strengthening, such that not just institution, even process strengthening, such that any conduit pipe for corruption is blocked.
The consulting firm KPMG says only 30% of Nigerian banks have fully implemented anti-fraud measures that allow mandatory verification of the customer's identity before opening an account. In 2021, the central bank asked bank customers to report unauthorized debits to its customer protection desk. Last year, President Bola Tinubu launched an anti-corruption campaign and called for support. And in January, Nigeria's Independent Corrupt Practices Commission, ICPC, and the EFCC said they are teaming up to fight corruption.
We have our own constraints, just like every other organization. But we know that as a commission, that everybody's eyes on the commission. We have been doing our best. We have a good team.
But Botti says words must be matched with action.
Corruption is systemic, then we need a more systemic approach to fighting it. So with all of the initiatives that we have on ground, we need to begin to deploy these things in a truthful manner. So for instance, again, we have the EFCC. They need to do more beyond just picking some few persons here and there. They need to touchlight more. They need to investigate more. They need to prosecute more people.
The global financial watchdog, the Financial Action Task Force, says Nigeria has until May next year to address financial crimes, including terrorism financing, or risk being excluded from the global financing system, which would make it more difficult for Nigeria to do business and access international financing. Nigerian authorities say they'll make sure that doesn't happen. Timothy Obiezu, VOA News, Abuja, Nigeria.
Thank you so much, Timothy Obiezu.
Yeah, and to go back to that gender neutral aspect, I think it's a very, very interesting research that if our audience wants to know more, they can refer to the OSCE.org. Well, they'll know. Yeah, it's very interesting.
Awesome.
So I wanted to ask you, Miss Anamila, is she here?
Yes, she's with us. Can you hear us, Miss Anne?
Yes, I can hear you.
Awesome. So can you briefly give us examples of what constitutes corruption?
Well, I think one of the key things around corruption is that, firstly, it's usually an illegal act. And then secondly, it also involves abuse of one's position. And it also is about that person that is initiating the corrupt action, gaining some sort of advantage out of it. So normally corruption involves solicitation of whether it's financial or material gain for that person that is corrupt. And it happens, in various ways. It could be a request for a direct bribe. It could be double dealing. And as we are seeing in more and more these days, or maybe it's just that we are more alert, the issues of sextortion, all those border on corruption.
Right.
So it's about doing something because you're in a position, and then the other person needs that service, and it's usually around public office, though it does happen in other areas as well.
I agree. Bribe, extortion, and so forth. Well, let's come to Lusaka, where you are, where the president constantly speaks firmly against corruption. And in this next clip that we're about to watch, it's an alleged corruption tactic that happens in the health system. Our colleague Kathy Shorts covered it, and we'll come back.
Charity Musamba is a lecturer at the University of Zambia. She says she experienced the situation aptly described by the president. On March 10, she was waiting for a full blood count examination at a Lusaka health facility, along with her sister who was caring for her, when a medical staffer allegedly attempted to solicit a bribe from her sister, Albert Sato.
Look at the queue of people waiting to be examined, and there's only one machine. And in some cases, it even develops problems as it's been utilized. So if you want your sister to be examined, I can quickly push her name up the list. But that's on condition that you also help me.
Ms. Anne, when we look at this particular tactic in the health system, do you think that it's more of a corruption culture, or is it, just people who are innately like that?
I think it's both. There are people that are innately like that, but then when corruption is allowed to perpetuate in a country or in institutions, then it becomes a culture, especially where people think they can get away with it and where addressing corruption is not consistent. So it starts with individuals, indeed, but it does turn into a culture, depending on how it's handled.
Right. So the people can be corrupted as well as the system itself can be corrupted.
Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Anna. We'll, discuss more about the culture of corruption. For now, let's take a short break. When we return, we'll hear more from Ms. Anne Mbewe Anamela, Executive Director of NGOCC, Non-Governmental Gender Organization Coordinating Council. She will help us look more at possible solutions to fighting corruption. And as usual, we ask you to share your thoughts on this topic on our social media platforms at VOA Africa. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and X, formerly known as Twitter. Use the hashtag VOA Our Voices. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
In times of change, when the world seems uncertain and what we hear doesn't reflect what we see, we seek the truth. When we are told only part of the story, we lose trust. In moments of crisis, our dreams, hopes, and wishes for a better tomorrow depends on a free press. At Voice of America, we bring you the stories that people take risks to see. We connect the world and unite it with truth. At Voice of America, we show you the whole picture.
Health, wellness, sport, beauty, medical breakthroughs. Healthy Living cares about your well-being. What are the main health concerns in Africa and around the world? Find out the latest on coronavirus. Connect with our experts and ask them questions.
How long does the virus stay?
Join me, Linor Moudou, in Washington every week on Healthy Living, right here on VOA.
Welcome back. You're tuned into Our Voices. We're discussing corruption and how women are affected and also which part they play in it. With us via Zoom from Lusaka, Zambia is Ms. Anne Mbewe Anamela, Executive Director of NGOCC, Non-Governmental Gender Organization Coordinating Council, and will now help us look at some possible solutions to fighting corruption. But before that, in Ghana, corruption is a major issue, and state agencies mandated to tackle it are struggling to succeed in their mission. Civil society groups are taking up the challenge with initiatives that exposes corruption in the public sector, creating public awareness, and also pushing for prosecution. Let's take a look and then discuss this further. Isaac Kaledzi has more from Accra, Ghana.
That's because as a journalist, you must have a heart.
These Ghanaian journalists are planning for their next big investigative story. They work for the Fourth Estate, an Accra-based non-profit public interest and accountability initiative by the Media Foundation for West Africa.
We work with Ghanaians, we work with whistleblowers who give us information. And so we look at issues and we go deep into those issues. We bring them out in forms of, publications, online, write-ups and YouTube videos and all that, mainstream documentaries.
The publications focuses largely on anti-corruption related stories. Since launching in 2021, it has published several groundbreaking anti-graft stories. Among them was an exposé by the project on asset declaration following a requirement that government officials declare their assets. The Fourth Estate filed the case with Ghana's Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice that further investigated the matter.
So when we did that story, as many as 294 or so public officials hurriedly declared their assets. In fact, before the publication, they are not declared, but they were in office. But when we published the story, very quickly, they declared their assets. And we thought that that was impactful and it sent the right message to authorities and to public officials.
Anti-corruption campaigners say fighting corruption in Ghana has become a daunting task, despite the country launching the National Anti-Corruption Action Plan, a policy document with plans to combat corruption.
The National Anti-Corruption Action Plan was the blueprint for all of us to fight corruption. However, in all these very glowing attributes that I gave, you would realize that there are so many gaps within the system that we haven't paid attention to. And for that matter, it makes the fight against corruption a difficult one.
Some of those gaps include weak laws that hinder the work of state institutions mandated to investigate and prosecute corrupt public officials. Civil society groups like the Center for Democratic Development, CDD, are filling the gap and taking on the challenge. In 2017, the organization launched the Corruption Watch Project in an attempt to reduce public corruption through advocacy for transparency.
We are able to do original investigations. We have actual investigative journalists as part of the team that do the investigation, but we also try to follow up on cases that are alive or cases that we feel have been buried and we forgotten, that we think we need to revive.
The activism by the CDD team for the past 7 years appears to be yielding results.
We didn't want the issue of corruption to die and also to be episodic. You know, we just wanted to keep it on the minds of citizens that we need to keep fighting. We need to take an interest. You know, they need to join the fight because we're feeling that corruption was becoming normalized and people felt that, oh, well, that's how it is.
Thanks to the works of these civil society groups, the fight against corruption is on people's mind.
Both as anti-corruption and governance experts and think tanks, a lot of work has been done. We have shown evidence of research that corruption is an issue and it is hydra-headed. And to fight it, we need serious commitment.
Isaac Kalaji, VOA News, Accra.
Thank you so much, Isaac Kalezi, for that report from Accra, Ghana. And indeed, as you said, fighting corruption is on people's mind, and organizations are trying their very best to do what they can to curb corruption. Now, back to our guest who's on Skype from Lusaka, Zambia, Miss Anne. Now, I often see police officers on the road when I'm on the continent, and they're in the heat of the day, and from what I can gather, their salaries are very small. Is increasing salary in government or civil service positions a sustainable solutions to curbing corruption, especially on the road when you are out and about?
Well, I think it's okay. That's part of the solution, but there is more to it. Earlier on, we spoke about whether it's individual or it's systemic. Mm-hmm. So at an individual level, I think there's need to in a way change mindsets, though, and that's not an easy thing to do. So it's both a cultural issue and it's a systemic issue, and these are personal issues. Increasing salaries might help, but then I don't know to what extent that would help. I think we'd really need a study around that, because there are persons that have been involved in corruption that were fairly in the high income bracket. So is it really about the salaries, or is it about systems, as we said, and about, culture and just the practices that have become embedded in the way we do things. So if we were to, for instance, go by the route of increasing salaries, that, of course, would speak to issues around how the economy is growing and how that growth is sustained in order to sustain, higher salaries. But I think it's a combination of things. It's salaries, it's regulation, it's the justice system, and it's looking at our culture and our values, and our values too.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Let's talk more about your organization. We spoke at the top of the show that, the corruption culture, which may be the issue. How does your organization work to curb this in place where it has become part of life?
Well, I think the first thing we do is start with us, ourselves as an organization. We have a set of principles that we believe in, and that we try to inculcate even in staff, which include transparency, accountability, integrity. And, NGOCC is a membership-based organization, an umbrella organization for 111 NGOs, CBOs, and faith-based organizations around the country. And we all share these values that I've spoken about. So it starts with us as well, even as we monitor what's happening in the country and try to hold other institutions to account. So because we're an advocacy organization and a mouthpiece for women in Zambia, we're able to speak up whenever we notice any trends or we notice specific incidences of corruption. And then the other thing that we do is also at times engage relevant authorities to bring to light what's happening or to find out how these issues are being handled, and also to suggest how best we can address issues of corruption. And we also form coalitions with other civil society organizations, because when we form a critical mass and our voice is louder and we demand answers and raise some of these issues. As NGOCC, we're also part of the Universal Periodic Review mechanism, and we're able to also raise these issues through some of the shadow reports that we do, around these international processes as well.
Very well. We've looked at the banking system. We've looked at the health system. Let's look briefly about the education system. When we look at sextortion, sex for grades, who should we focus on mostly? Should we focus on the teachers or should we focus on the students? Because we did talk about both the system and the individuals, and we know that students can also be perpetrators of, corruption. Who should we focus on?
Issues of corruption such as these need concerted efforts, when we look at all the possible stakeholders. So, yes, the teachers, and this should start right from the colleges and the universities where these teachers come from. I think the issues of extortion should be included even in the syllabus. And when they get into the schools, when they're, taken to the schools now, the school system also should have a system that can allow students to report these incidences without any negative repercussions, and also allow teachers to address these issues, because as you rightly said, sometimes it's both ways. It's the teachers and it's others the students themselves soliciting. So it needs to start there, and then besides that, we have we need other regulatory authorities that will ensure that the schools, the universities, and all these other learning institutions are regulated in a way that will first ensure that, for example, we as civil societies could help by ensuring that we sensitize both students and teachers, lecturers against these practices, but also where there are laid down rules and regulations in an organization, even around reporting and around action when these reports are received. There should be regulatory institutions that do their work. And when this is done, also it should be very, very clear what the punitive measures are at institution level as well as at individual level. So it needs a coordinated response with various institutions and individuals too.
Absolutely. But what about the household? It's like not everybody's equal in front of corruption. What can we teach our children? What can be taught, in a household so, people are less likely to commit corruption?
a fantastic question, because we have, as NGOCC, now have introduced what we call a household approach. And that is recognizing that most challenges that societies face start at a household approach. And one of the things where we are encouraging in this household approach is dialogue in families. You know, sometimes our culture is such that children cannot talk to their parents. Parents think they really, it's the role of the schools, to teach some of these value systems to the children. So we're encouraging dialogue at household level.
That's right.
And this is working well. It has other effects that we did not expect, very positive. Like, for example, encouraging even women to speak out more out there because they're being consulted more and part of the dialogue at household level. So that's one approach that we are taking. And then there's also the churches. We have churches all across Zambia.
Thank you so much.
And some of these issues can be taken up there.
That's right. Well, that's it for today. Thank you so much. We would like to thank you very much, our guest, Anne Mbewe-Anamela, Executive Director of NGOCC, Non-Governmental Gender Organization Coordinating Council, for shedding light on this very impactful situation of corruption we all of us face, especially women, and the fight to expose it. If you want to watch more of the Dirty Deals Uncovering Corruption in Africa series, along with this and other episode of Our Voices, go on the VOA website at voaafrica.com and our YouTube channel, where you can find the top news stories of the day. Thank you so much, and goodbye.
Shimori Badejo holds a first degree in mass communications, master's in communications arts, and a PhD in social psychology, specializing in mass mobilization.
The simplest definition of public relations, which also relates to a nation, is doing good and letting people know. Now, what we hear, it's people demarketing even their country. I grew up in a home where the fear of God was actually implanted on us.
What led you to the good old days?
I realized that they lack sense of history. Even if history is not allowed in schools anymore, let us see how we can bring snippets of this history.
Timeless Conversations, airing every Saturday at 8:30 p.m.
Hello Nigeria, hello Africa. You're watching Plus TV Africa, and the program is Sports Business with Orufo Ezaga. A lot of sports we're going to be talking about today, but principally, as you know, with this program we focus on the business side of things. Sports is big entertainment, but then sports is big business as well. Today we have a bumper package for you. We're going to be talking about tennis in Nigeria, and all we need to do to return Nigerian tennis to the heights of the 70s to 90s, when giants like Nduka Odizo, David Imonitie, Tony Umor, Sadiq Abubakar, and the like were ruling Nigerian tennis and featuring regularly on the world stage. Today, joining us for this program will be the president of the Nigerian Tennis Federation, Mr. Dayo Akindoju, and Mr. Professor Sadiq Abubakar, who's an adjunct professor at the Florida International University at the United States of America. Both of them will be trying to dissect with me the tennis industry in Nigeria, what is happening as in the current status, and what needs to be done to further progress the sport in Nigeria. Nobody is in a better position to do so than the two guests that we have on the program today. Before we get started, I'm going to give you a short break, about a minute or so, to get prepared for what you're going to hear over the next 45 minutes. When we return, the business begins. You're welcome back to Sports Business with Orufo Ezaga. Today, I'm flying solo in the studio, but we have two great guests that are going to be joining us via Zoom. The president of the Nigerian Tennis Federation joins from Abuja, and the ex-Nigerian international Professor Sadiq Abubakar joins from the United States. Hello, Mr. President.
Good afternoon, Nigerians, and Ken, good to be here to talk about tennis in Nigeria.
President, I think a good place to start is what the status of tennis in Nigeria is today. What would you say is the status of tennis in Nigeria? Are we making progress? Where is the support coming from? Do we need support? Are we looking at the government? Are we looking at the private sector? Please give us your opinion.
Okay, thank you for this big opportunity. Tennis in Nigeria has been climbing positively, but at a very slow pace. What has happened in tennis over the years is a very slow growth in all the major departments of tennis that has happened. Facilities, players, officiating, coaching, those four core areas, growth has been very slow. But even as slow as it is, we have had some progress in at least ensuring that the game is, the players are better engaged and facilities are improved. But the summary is that the pace of development has been extremely slow. And one of the major reasons is that there is no proper structured, funded program that the federations can run easily. So what we do is to plan around relationships with a few corporate organizations and few individuals. Sadly, of course, government will hear funding even on their part is difficult. So I've been president for 7 years. I can be quoted that I have not received, or my federation has not received a dime from my supervising ministry. So
7 years.
We've been doing all we have been doing purely based on relationships with some few corporate organizations and individuals.
Okay, Mr. President, you say in 7 years you have not received a dime from the government. Did I hear you correctly?
Perfectly.
You know, I'm trying to repeat that and basically amplify it. Is the fact that, out on the streets, people think that you guys in the federations collect all of these monies from government and you misappropriate them, So I think it's a bit of a surprise that you're saying money has not come in. And I think it's worth, echoing the sort of challenges you guys then face as a result.
You heard me very clearly. You heard me very right. I want to repeat it. I've been president since July 2017 till date. I have not received, or my federation, to the best of my knowledge. Of course, we have only one account, it's a TSA account, and funds that comes there, it's almost open to the secretary and the treasurer of the federation, and we have not. We have made several attempts to request for funds. Sometimes we're asked to make budgets and so on. We do them regularly, but like I said, and I'm repeating, as the president of the Nigerian Tennis Federation for the past 7 years, we as a board has not received any form of financial support from the supervisory ministry.
So even when you play the Davis Cup matches and you have to travel out of this country, you fund that yourselves?
Absolutely. But sometimes we get support from our international body, the body affiliated to the ITF. So even the one we hosted recently, we got what we call the hosting grant, which is normally given to every host nations that is hosting many of the international tournaments that the ITF is hosting. So yes, we got this time $34,000, and of course we had to look for a lot of much more money to ensure that we hosted and thankfully won, got promoted. So funds came from individuals and a few corporate organizations that supported us, and that's how we were able to host the tournament, and that's how we have been surviving. That's how generally, as a federation, we have been surviving. Again, I said I can report it. These things are verifiable. Out on the street is news that are unverified. Every year, personally, I don't want to brag about it, but I put lots of my personal funds into supporting. Every year, minimum, maybe 50 million, sometimes 70, 80 million. That personally from my businesses that I put together to support the games, of course, because of the passion. The tournaments we run yearly and so on. So there are 3-4 major supporters in the areas of running some basic programs, tournament majorly. The central bank, for the past 46 years, has been running a yearly tournament. The last time, the cost of the whole tournament was 30 million. And before then, it was like 20 million yearly, and that's what we get. These are all verifiable, and of course, we have rain oil, we have the Dala Hard Court, and a lot of the other ones are like Davnotch, sponsored by a company called Davnotch. I don't want to mention the name of the principal. But this is how we have done whatever we have done so far. And then there are lots of private groups, like I would say one of the few academies we have. Not my idea of what an academy should be, but I mean, we are running as an academy, Oran Academy is out there doing a lot of support in the area of players. I mean, they take 6 or thereabout, now maybe about 10 players. They support them and they ensure that they are on. So these are all individual and private
initiatives.
Things that are initiatives that are ongoing. So that's how we've been surviving, and that's it.
Okay, let me bring in Prof at this point. Prof, you've heard the president.
Yes,
you've heard the president, and you live in a different environment. You live in the United States, and you've lived there a long time. What I want to understand is, what is a federation supposed to do for a sport in a country like Nigeria, and how do you grow the game, say for instance in the United States?
Well, it is sad to hear my president, go back and to share the challenges that he and his board are going through to develop tennis. It is true. I can confirm what he has said, because I'm always involved at the national level with some of the ministers and with this conversation. And I ask them why, and I never get a definitive response from them. Now, because we have two different clients, America, or the industrialized world, function differently, approach sports differently, especially America, right? Nigeria and Africa, we approach sport development, with a different mentality, and the culture different. So we have to go into specifics, to really have a fully understanding of how these other nations prepare their athletes, right? We have to look at the macro level, and then of course at the micro level, discussion to understand, but I'm happy to hear, my president, we had a nice conversation last year about this time for about 20 minutes, and then I appreciate the honesty, and for the first time, I'm hearing specifics, so this is encouraging, and thank you for bringing us together. This is the first time in 7 years that a media organization, has brought us together. So this is very, very good.
Okay, so, Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
What does the Nigerian government, first, should it be the government's responsibility to fund federations, for instance? That's number one. And number two, if it is their responsibility, what do they expect from you?
All right. There are two ways to answer that question. Ideally, like it happens in other climes, even in Africa, I can take Morocco as an example. Yeah, Morocco as an example. Last year I became one of the vice presidents of CAF. So we're at our inaugural meeting in Tunis this year, and the vice president in charge of the North, who is from Morocco, was chatting with me, and he said he's not getting support from his government at all. And I said, what do you mean? The government does not? He said, no. So they are giving him only 3.5 million euro in a year. What can he do with that? And, I was majorly embarrassed, because 3.5 million euro and you're complaining, I don't get one dime. And these are conversations we had. So yes, ideally, there are two ways again I want to answer that question. When things are fully functional, when the awareness, the culture, the commitment of all parts of people that are supposed to be involved in sports, when they are fully realizable, government does not have to support in terms of financials. Okay. Because, again, I start culture. If we have a good culture of sports, let me not limit it to tennis alone. If we have a good culture of sports, we imbibe from age 5, age 6 that sport is part of our life, and sport is part of our culture, and sport is supposed to be part of our expenditure. You know, growing up, and then as you grow, you know that you should not go and watch a match free. You should pay to watch. So that culture needs to be created again. I can't really say it was fully there even in the times past, in the 70s and the 80s. Yes, we used to pay a token to go watch some football or some other matches or sports, but the culture needs to be developed and be imbibed early. So when you know that sports is supposed to be part of your life expenditure, that you budget to ensure that you pay to take part in sporting activities or to watch sporting activities, you know, it becomes part of you. It becomes easy. When somebody talks to you about sports, it's a sweet sound to your ear to say, oh, he came to ask me that, I mean, there is a game coming up, let's go watch, you know. It's something that that culture is not there anymore, or it's rather very low. So if that culture is developed and progress, which will take a long time, the way it is going now, because there are several challenges even on the way. If that culture goes on, it will be easy for you to get sponsorship, for you to get participation, for you to get everybody to come together, the media, the coaches, the officials, everybody will jump at it easily. And so it makes the job easy. But
hang on a moment, Presido. Mr. President, see, that culture that you're speaking about, right? Who creates that culture? There's some people that would say, if you have programs developed by the Federation that are interesting to young people and their parents, maybe from an early age, then hopefully you can develop that culture, like you have said, from an early age through their lives. Who creates the culture?
Everybody in the sporting industry. Everybody, from the teachers in the primary school, because it's about interaction. Who do these kids interact with? And then what are they exposed to at that age? Again, I'll go to the other climes where it is working better than Nigeria. You know, you wake up in the morning and you find kids, five, it's part of them, because it's part of the kids and their parents. The parents wake them up and look, you have to go out, you have to go to work, you have to go for a walk, you have to go to play tennis, you have to go. So it's a culture that everybody must be involved in and generated from that childhood. But who are the people? Parents, number one. Number two, teachers. And of course, these are people that must have had ideas about sporting. Again, that is where the culture comes in, because the parents must even have the culture, or know the culture, or believe in the culture of sports to be able to impact it on the kids or the younger ones. So that is where it starts from. And then as it goes, the government too has a role to play, because a lot of these sporting facilities, a majority of them for Nigeria are provided by the government. You know, even when you plan cities, you plan Abuja, you plan Lagos, you create areas for recreation where you can, of course, access such kind of facilities equally for development. So when you wake up in the morning and behind your house, you see a tennis court, you know, growing up. You will be inquisitive. You see people jump there every morning. One day, you as a kid, because you are exposed to seeing that, you will go there, and then of course you will get exposed to participation in that particular sports or sports generally. So it's everybody.
Okay,
it's
so
government.
just before I go to Prof, yeah, you meet with government, you meet with the ministers, you meet with maybe the permanent secretaries. What do they expect from you as the president of the Tennis Federation?
What they expect, because it is, some of these discussions are very difficult to do with them, because you have had several interactions with ministers, with the permanent secretaries. Some of the things are, okay, we don't have funds. We are waiting for funds. We don't have money. So we've made budgets, but it's not financially backed or cash backing. You know, it's not there. So you go back. They expect you to go to the field and look for sponsors and run your programs. That is what. But they equally expect you to bring athletes that will win Olympic medals and Grand Slam events. That's what they expect, you know. Okay. But it's not going to happen that way easily until, like I said, we all come together and ensure that every department of every sport is taken care of.
Okay, so Prof, you've heard the president talk about all stakeholders coming together to advance tennis in Nigeria. You yourself are involved in a private initiative. You are an ex-international. You played tennis at a very high level, and now you're thinking of giving back to society. And you are trying to, on your own, muscle some of the former players, you know, to try and do something for tennis in Nigeria. Can you let us know what that is and how much progress you have made?
Let me put clarity in what my president just said regarding building a culture of participation, a culture of involvement, a culture of information sharing to develop tennis and tennis sports development in Nigeria. I've been very fortunate since 2009 to interact with government, the ministers, the DG, some permanent secretary. Just recently, I was very involved in writing the 26 National Sports Industry Policy. So I know the thinking, I know the mentality, and I know the challenges facing sports development in Nigeria, particularly sports. So I'm really excited to hear, from my president that this is what he and his board have been facing for the last 7 years, which of course I know because I've always been involved with my late father, Adejimo, right? And then throughout that period, he may not know a lot of this, but at least he's knowing now, that yes, I have been involved for the last 34 years, and I've accepted my role in being critical in the beginning, but I am not anymore now because, of course, age, and then because of the wisdom, and then because of the education. Now, to come back to what he was referring to about culture, right? Remember, in these industrialized nations, it is the middle class that sustain sports development. So this is very fundamental. In industrial nations, right, America, Australia, Britain, and all of that, right, government, they play a limited role in sports development. It's all in the private sector. right? So if you bring it back to the challenges we're facing right now in Nigeria in terms of the economic challenges and other cultural challenges, you begin to understand, what a lot of these sports presidents, including my president, right, are going through. So I'm very sympathetic to that. Now, coming back to your question of my role in the last 34 years, with that shifted, which is expected, from being critical, to now, being participatory in my stuff. And I'm glad, honestly, I'm glad that I'm able to, be having this conversation to let the president know that, look, he has already told me that last year that, yes, he believes in what I'm doing, he supports the vision, but again, there are contradictions in what a federation does and what private individuals or organizations do. I understand that distinction, right? I'm still Sadiq Abdullahi. I came from poor, all of the people that are in the academy that he talked about, right? Their parents cannot even put food on the table. My parents cannot, are struggling to put food on the table. So we know that. So that is the angle that I'm coming from, and a lot of us that represented Nigeria. Remember, most of us are ball boys, right? So there's no level of arrogance now after we've gone through this and become successful. And I think the point the Federation has been missing as far as that is concerned, that there's no arrogance in my accomplishment, because my father cannot read and write in English, okay? He was a messenger to the federal government in Lagos, State House in Nigeria. So all of this information are coming to the president and the board, that yes, in order for us to come together, we must build relationship first. And that is the problem I see. The Federation in the past have not really taken the time to build relationship, because the perception is that, yes, we are either too critical or maybe our approach. And I told the president last year, that yes, there's ignorance on our part, there is this exuberance on our part, and we've matured and we can come together. So now, finally, to your point of mobilizing Nigerians, it's a tough job to mobilize Nigeria in the diaspora, tough job to mobilize Nigerians in Nigeria, and tough job to mobilize Africans to come in and then buy. But we're making progress. I'm really, really excited that, that the president came out and then spoke the way he has spoken, for us now to go back and rethink our approach and then come back, and then now that 7 years, going to, is in his 8th year, right? So I'm telling him, what legacy do you want to leave? Forget about, all the perception you've had about Sadiq Abdullahi, Ndiko Diesel, and the rest of that, right? So put that aside. What do you want to leave behind, right? We're going to be working on the guidelines for the National Sports Federation. If things are going the way I am being, in the conversation I'm having, to look at the new guidelines that will, and then the plan that will allow, government to respond to what he just said. So for me, I'm in touch with the minister himself, the current minister, right? Who's spoken 2 or 3 times, and and hopefully those things that he mentioned can be addressed appropriately, bringing them together. I'm involved, like I said. I know what the problems are. I know what the solutions are, right? But I cannot do it alone, right? You have to trust me. I have to trust you. And if there are benefits, let us share those benefits, And I like one thing again, before I stop, right? He gave us specifics about what the grant he gets from ITF, right? And then the politics within the CAF, which I know all of these things because, a lot of people privately and I ask questions, right? So for that alone, my respect to the president. So this is some of this problem can be addressed, right? If we all come together.
Okay. So, Presido, we're going to go on a short break now. When we come back, we're going to be talking about, the business of tennis. Now the government is not really forthcoming with financial assistance, and this game needs to run. I appreciate that today you are a president who, can afford to chip in substantially if when the need arises. But what if tomorrow we have a president who is not financially as strong as you are? What is he going to do? All right, that's number one. Number two, if the government is not coming up with money, how do we then raise capital for the sport of tennis in such a way that the federation can be self-funding and entrepreneurs can make a lot of money out of this? Remember what Professor Sadiq Abubakar said when he said in the developed world, it's the middle class that sustains sports development. If we take that and we add it to your point about culture, if we can grow the culture and add that to middle class interest, sports can thrive in Nigeria, and tennis would be one of the top sports without a doubt. So we take a short break now. When we return, we focus on the money.
It is engagement we need to have.
Those who suffer miscarriages are never taken into account.
Members of the National Assembly are also influence peddlers.
You are sitting on Nigerians' money.
From the Babin, I pay my rent. From the Babin, I send my children to school.
A consultative engagement.
No any tangible notification before they ban us.
It's one thing for people to be at your back and the heat of the moment, and another thing for them to still be with you when push comes to shove.
You're welcome back to the program. You're watching Sports Business with Orufuo Ezaga, and we're reaching you live from Plus TV Africa's studios in Lagos. All right, on the program with me today, we have the president of the Nigerian Tennis Federation, Mr. Dayo Akindoju, as well as former international and adjunct professor of Florida International University, Professor Sadiq Abubakar. Now, President. Sorry?
Abdullahi.
Sorry, Sadiq Abdullahi. Anyway, sorry about that. Okay, so to the president, President, you know that internationally, many of these tennis tournaments that we see are either owned by private investors or by clubs, community clubs or communal clubs, country clubs. These guys come together to organize these tournaments, not just as charity, but as business, because they make a lot of money from this enterprise. Wimbledon, for instance, is a private club. It organizes Wimbledon, which is the richest Grand Slam in the world. And they say, based on what I have read, that Wimbledon, the All England and Croquet Club, I think, that owns Wimbledon, makes 98% of its revenues every year from the 2 weeks of Wimbledon. Why are the clubs in Nigeria not taking a leaf from that to organize their own tournaments and then probably make money from this, seeing that most of their members are high-ranking members in society?
Well, again, thank you so much. Again, I'll come back to the thing about culture, culture of sports. That culture that I've been hammering on, it's not just in playing the game. It's understanding that you should, as a human being living on earth, contribute financially and otherwise to anything about sports in your country. It's a basic thing that if it is not there, then no matter what you do, because I'm coming to approach you to talk to you about tennis. It is easier when you already know that tennis exists, number one. Tennis is important, and it is my responsibility to support the development of tennis. You are prepared. You are a prepared vessel that approaching will be easy, and so further conversation will almost automatically fall in. But now, a lot of people, of course, we have over 40, 50 different sports in Nigeria, but let me stay with tennis. A lot of people know that tennis exists as a sport. A couple of people, too, partake in tennis purely for recreation. But the well-to-do, people that can bring out funds to support the developmental part of the game are generally very, very reluctant for a couple of reasons. One, I won't want to go the negative. Maybe they have been beaten because, of course, there are several federations. Some federations go take money, they don't do what they said they would do, and then when another federation goes to the same person, everybody goes to Dangote, everybody goes to Otedola, everybody. There are few names, among the big set of names, but there are others anyway. So at the club level, even at the club level, we have a lot of people. I run the club too in Abuja Country Club. We have a lot of people there that can come together easily. But the first question is that culture in them? The culture is not just playing, it's in participating in the development of the game. So that part is still very gray. People that has that kids you are supporting, and for the games entirely, they are very few.
Yeah.
They are very, very few. So what we have done, and what I very much hope very soon I'll get people of like minds with us and a couple of other people, is there's one thing we need to do. I don't know if you remember one conversation we had, Clem. Set up something that will attract everybody to know that, so this is possible. This is possible in Nigeria. A Nigerian can play at the Grand Slam level.
Yeah.
Let me tell you something. We just hosted the Davis Cup, and for the first time in a long time, we got promoted to Group 2, World Group 2 stage. Which is like the next to the stage, World Group 1, which is the highest level Nigeria ever got to. Sadiq was part of that team in 1988 or 1989 that they got to World Group 1. If you know the number of calls and people that want to see me, that want to talk to me about tennis, that want to associate with me about tennis, especially like a kid that nobody believed in, became the revelation of the tournament. I'm talking about Michael Ahmad, Emmanuel, and a couple of the other players. It has brought activity and prominence and, of course, engagement on the sports to the federations. And we are taking them one by one. So there are several approaches. But one approach, which is very, very important, is to do something that will prove that with proper, structured, and funded program, we can achieve success. Once success is achieved, people will run. That's one thing about Nigeria and, of course, everywhere in the world. Once they see that a Nigerian is doing well, out of any sport, everybody runs to that person and of course that program. So I'll go back again to Oron Academy. Oron Academy started 2-3 years ago, and they took 3, 4, 5 players that they noticed had potentials, got 3, 4, 5 coaches around them, gave them everything, made them play tennis, made them go around the world, participate in ITF junior and then of course now senior tournaments. And then as that went on, a player that was not very well known became, and is today, the #1 player in Nigeria, which means it's possible when people are groomed with the proper pathway as it is there, with programs, it's possible to achieve, excellence.
Okay. So
so that's what it is, basically. Do an event, a couple of them, if possible. And this is where it doesn't have to be with the federation. If Sadiq Abdullahi, for example, brings 4, 5, of course, I hear Nduka Odizo is coming. Send me an invite to Lagos to run a clinic and do some programs. Nduka Odizo has a very good brand. He's a Nigerian that, as of today, I think only one other person has got close to his record, reaching what's it called, the 4th round of the Wimbledon, event. He's a brand. He's a brand, but we expect when that kind of brand enters, everybody wants to go and see him. When Serena Williams came and her sister came to Lagos Law sometimes ago, everybody, I know so many people that flew from Abuja to Lagos to go. So people run towards a success story. Okay. So as we start to have that thing, pocket of them here and there, and see that, with little support or with something happening around somewhere, good results can come out. We see that culture get developed, and funding will follow.
Okay, fantastic. So, I understand culture. I understand the fact that, people need to do a bit more, especially the people in the tennis community, as you have highlighted. To know that, look, if you're playing the game, if you love the game, then, it makes sense for you to invest what you can to ensure that future generations benefit from, from what you leave behind. I'm going to go to the prof now and ask him, like the president has identified different stakeholders, for instance. There's the federation, but then he spoke about the clubs, he spoke about the academies, and then, about those 3 and more. And so who do we turn to, who do we really turn to for guidance? There's a question I think I should ask the president before the board. I'm going to ask you. Please respond to what I have to say. Then maybe we'll go back to the president. And I'm going to ask you the question. Okay. Maybe the president will have. Now the question is, who is supposed to have a roadmap, a master plan of how tennis is supposed to get from ground zero to the top, and where each stakeholder fits in, right? So that's one question, Prof. Mr. President, you can answer that as well.
We have the federation has that incidentally, we have them in multiple platforms.
Okay.
There is the biggest one, which is from the ITF. It's drawn. You only adjust to suit your own local conditions.
Okay.
The pathway for development is very clear. You take a typical ITF tennis site, you will see everything about development of tennis in every department. And we have that document. But again,
is that document tailored to the Nigerian realities?
Exactly. It is tailored towards that. We have those documents. We have had them. We have reviewed them. But documents that are not because the document too only gives you guidance of how to run these things. But if the funding for each part of the thing is not readily available, or you don't have off-takers to take some part of the funding, for example, media, because they are part of the program, the developmental program, or physiotherapy, or any of the departments, for example, if you don't have all off-takers taking all or some of these things, you find out that you start, this side is working, the other side is not working, and of course you need a full robust thing where from the local government to the state government, and of course to the academies, to the clubs, these are all everybody participating to ensure
who is the champion of this? Is the federation that
of course it's the federation. It's the federation that
okay, so let's go to Prof now because of time, so that I can have his say. Prof, you live in a different country where things work, I imagine, as they're supposed to. What would you suggest, based on what you have heard so far, is the way to go in the Nigerian situation? Do we forget about government and just totally focus on the private sector? Do we get the clubs on board? That's the communal clubs, do we get, what do we do?
Well, first of all, you're correct. The full name is Sadiq Abubakar Abdullahi, right? So that needs to be okay. I like those three to go together right now.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, it gives me my professorial distinction between tennis player and the academic guy. Okay, listen, there are five areas that the president has gone through. He started with moral aspect, linking to the corporate social responsibility of individuals, corporation getting involved, right? That's the moral part. Then now we're going into the substantive aspect of our discussion, which focuses on what? Technical, strategic, political, and economic aspect of sports business and particularly tennis business. So let's make sure we put them, compartmentalize them well so that we can understand and then bring the pieces back together in order for us to be able to to measure what we're doing. Now let me go back to your question and clarify, right? Now, the International Tennis Federation is the big boss. The president is correct. If you go to their website, everything is there. Guidelines and guidance are there for all of the partners, all of the countries. Let me go back to your Wimbledon reference, right? The British Lawn Tennis Association, in partnership with that club, they work together to now the right for Wimbledon, right? The USTA organizes the US Open. The Australian Tennis Federation organizes the Australian Open. The French Open organizes that. So let's understand the relationship. It goes back to what he's saying regarding culture, right? There's no argument about that. We must build a sustainable culture in order for us to achieve what we want to achieve. So that is number two. Now, coming back to Nigeria, he has said everything. I mean, look, these are conceptual discussions. We've had this conceptual, we're talking about, what to do, how to do, and all. We've been saying that for years, so it has come, and I'm happy. It has come to a point. He got to is before he became the president, there are over 10, 11 other presidents, since 1960s that have been, coming up trying to figure out, what to do. But we're having a different conversation today because Ndụka Udizo, that you said is coming, Tony Moore and all of that, and then Arum Academy that he mentioned, right? They are being given opportunity now. He's highlighting all of them now, to bring them into the culture. Now, let me be very clear and let me draw distinction between the role. The Nigerian Tennis Federation role is encompassing. So if it's looking for Abdullahi to come up with his little stuff, it's just a piece of it. Ndụka Udizo organizing a clinic is just organizing a clinic to raise awareness of tennis. So if Arum is having an academy, right, and they're helping the little kids and all of that stuff, it's just a little 0.1% of what the Nigerian Tennis Federation, ought to be doing based on the template of the ITF. Now, what I'm hoping to hear is that now that the president is now, I like what I'm hearing, is trying to bring everybody together, right? I think the first thing is, to have a meeting, a Zoom meeting with all of these people that he just mentioned. And then let's see how each of them can contribute to helping him, and then to me, that transparency and accountability and all of that, now the Nigerian, people like me that have a lot of network and a lot of contacts, then I can now project, that look, there is a new repositioning, rebranding of Nigerian tennis by bringing this people up. Again, we must clearly define the role of each person. We cannot be fighting the president. I've fought the president, all my life. And, at this point, you want me to be fighting the president or fighting the system, right? So for me, Sadiq Abdullahi, he's not going to do that now because I don't need the Tennis Federation to do anything for me, right? So for me now is to work with the president in order to, again, I know my role. I know theory, I know practice, and then the business of tennis or sports development can be achieved only if we can package what we just talked about and then present it and market it to Nigeria and the rest of the world.
Okay.
The sponsorship will come.
Okay, Prof. Thank you very much for that. Presido, we've run out of time actually. So we've come to the end. If you have just a final thing to say, very quickly, 30 seconds, and then we can.
Two areas that I'm looking out to desperately get funding from is the lottery fund, the lottery fund in Nigeria. Of course, that's an organization that should be able to support sports development, and then of course CSR from very big government parastatals, because CSR is meant to support anything around whatever you're doing. I expect customs with whatever they get, and they have a budget for CSR, give sports, because it's part of what those funds should go for.
Okay,
yeah,
fantastic, Mr. President. And on my part, I think that the government should think a bit more about sports, because Oktoberfest that is coming is likely because our young people are not productively engaged, and sports can do a lot of that for the government. It's also a great distraction. Yes, I thank you also for joining us again. Of course, we're going to engage more in the future, but until that time, this is me, Orufuo Ezaga, saying, be productive, be good, and stay safe.
Two things strike visitors to the Extreme Chainsaw Carving Show: the sound of multiple chainsaws of various sizes hard at work, and the strong scent of fresh cut cedar. 20 chainsaw artists taking part in a 3-day
Gotta change direction. My mind's going, gotta change direction. My mind's going 100 miles per hour every single time I'm carving.
Eagles, bears, wolves, owls are quite popular with the artists. Warden is carving an alligator, not something. He says picking up the wood is the most challenging part.
The wood gets pretty heavy, like that Groot over there. That Groot probably weighs 300 pounds, so that's always the challenge, is just picking it up.
Chainsaw carving was seen as a predominantly male domain. In recent years, a growing number of women carvers have taken part in live shows.
For me, it's not so much about the competition, it's actually about the company and all the amazing people that participate in this event.
Lee Woody, with a day job at a software company, got into chainsaw carving 7 years ago, following an attempt to build a house for a squirrel. She says beyond craftsman satisfaction, this art has additional benefits.
It is a full body workout. A lot of the time I'm doing these type of